story and to give you all a perspective on chronic kidney disease. When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with Henoch-Schönlein purpura. It resulted in 2 kidney transplants, over 20 surgeries, cancer, a decade of dialysis, and a lifetime of improper blood chemistry. In grade 3, I was sick with colds back-to-back for months. It wasn't ending. The doctors tried everything to make it stop. Until one day in grade 3, my teacher, Miss Serraldo, I walked up to her complaining that I couldn't move my right leg. 24 hours later, my right leg's paralysis turned into full body paralysis, acute spinal arthritis, I was told. I was bruising from head to toe, and my organs were bleeding. The doctors didn't really know how to treat HSP at the time, so they decided to throw chemotherapy, prednisone, and a whole whack of different antibiotics at me. At the time, I didn't know how to take pills. I was only 8, right? So my mother used to have to crush up prednisone and chemotherapy, and she'd spoon feed me this powder, and the taste is putrid. It would make me vomit multiple times every time I'd have to take medications, and I'd force it down anyways. I'd try and try again until I got it down. By 9 years old, HSP had run its course and left my kidneys with too much visceral damage for me to survive. I was going to need dialysis one day. When I was 11, I started dialysis at the Children's Hospital here in Vancouver. And at the time, my mother, she was a single mom. She had to work at Liquidation World. So I would have to take a handy dart to and from dialysis alone at 11 years old. On average, it would be about a 7 or 8 hour day to do dialysis. It only took me 6 months to find a kidney transplant at that age. I guess it's because of kids needed to grow or something like that. But I was pretty lucky to get one so fast. Unfortunately though, at this time, the surgeries for kidney transplants, the rate of success was 50-50. And I was quite right on the line. It took 11 operations to get the kidney working. The ureter was shot. It was starved for blood. The ureter didn't connect properly, and it was leaking urine all through my body. My peritoneal cavity would fill up with urine. My legs were swollen with urine. I remember my left leg just being all puffed out with pee, and it was gross to think about, but I put it out of my mind. They ended up putting 6 different tubes all through my body to drain residual urine, and my mom would strap them to my legs, my thighs, my belly. It'd just be, I just wear baggy clothes. It was whatever, right? So, in order to fix this problem, they had to cut up my bladder. They took it and they sort of did this with it over my broken ureter, and then they glued it together. Apparently, I was told that I was the first person that human glue was used on internally. Hospitals can be really tolling. You're stuck in bed for long periods of time. Multiple different pieces sticking out of you bother you a lot. And after so many months of enduring this, I'd stopped eating, or being a kid really at that age. And the doctors wanted to put a feeding tube in me to keep me alive. But my mother saw me being tortured day in and day out. She decided to discharge me and take me camping. She made me eat again when we went camping, and we stopped in at hospitals all around Vancouver Island, just to make sure my condition was stable. And eventually we went back to the Children's. I was readmitted, and I was poked and prodded for a little while longer until they discharged me. After the hospital, I went back to school, grade 7. I still had all of the tubes hanging on my body and taped all around my legs. Navigating hallways full of kids, they just bounce off you like crazy. It's quite nerve-wracking. You walk around like this because you never know what kind of elbow is going to catch that tube, right? So I was quite scared. But my mother brought me up to be normal no matter what. Through chemo, I was outside playing with kids, doing water fights. When I went to school, if I had tubes, I'd have to go to school. My mother told me one day when I complained that I was feeling really ill, that if I don't see blood, you're going to school. As a teenager, I was very rebellious, mouthy, and a pain in the ass. I loved to be with my friends all day and night. My mother would have to hound me to take my pills. She'd call my friends, hunt me down, anything, just make sure I took those meds. I hated the pills. Prednisone, whenever it glanced my tongue and swallowing, it would taste just like the powder when I was a kid. It was horrible. I'm not sure I remember the whole picture of what I endured in children's or, all the experiences, but I just didn't seem to take my pills seriously. Grade 10 was a shining year of failure for me. My highest grade that year was 43%. That year I started smoking pot and drinking with my friends. I just wanted to be normal and do the stuff my friends did. I didn't really see myself as a sick kid. I tried. I went to meetings with other kids who had chronic illnesses, and I just felt out of place. I just wanted to be normal. So I did my best, but fitting in was hard for me because people that age don't really know what it's like to fight for your life, so I would always keep my history to myself. The few times I elaborated on it with my friends or a room, it would silence them, it would humble everybody, and I hate that. I hate feeling like this humbling presence. So I just kept it all to myself. One day, I went to see my father who lived in Montreal. He didn't really know much about my condition, and that made my mother tremendously worried about my medications. I was convinced it wasn't a problem. While in Montreal, I got sick with the flu. Within 1 week, I missed 70% of my transplant medications. When I returned to Vancouver, I was puffy and stopped urinating. I did enough damage to do chronic rejection. It was only a matter of time. I was 16 when they told me I was going to have to start dialysis again. It shattered my life, knowing that I was going to be attached to a machine again. I actually prayed for the first time in my life that night. I was so desperate. It had caused me to really hate what I did. When the Transplant Society, a lady named Sharon Duncan, asked me if I wanted another transplant, I told her I wasn't ready. It was horrible what I did. I felt that I needed to serve a sentence on dialysis to teach me a lesson, as what I did. But unfortunately, that sentence on dialysis didn't really teach me how to cope with my pills. When I started dialysis, I happened to be in a unique situation. My pediatric nephrologist was retiring, and rather than give me a new pediatric nephrologist, they decided to graduate me to an adult early. Soon enough, I was 16 years old doing dialysis side by side with senior citizens. In my second year of dialysis, I had an old man crash right beside me on dialysis. A team of people flooded in and jumped on top of this man, giving him CPR to keep him alive. Hemodialysis can be very draining, literally and figuratively. I used to take up to 6 liters of fluid off in 4 hours. I can only describe that feeling as somebody grabbing your spinal cord at the base and tugging it down until your head hurts. You can't walk. The days of dialysis, I was puffy, short of breath, and eager to take off my fluid. The days after dialysis, I reserved for bouncing back. I had no kidney function at all. I did not pee a drop for 10 years. It's unreal to think about that now. When you need dialysis, your body can't filter out many things. For some patients, like the dietitians mentioned, potassium is a very huge issue. I was told it'll turn your heart to jello, and you cannot be revived. They tried many fear tactics on me. Didn't work. But for some reason, my body handled potassium very well. I don't know why. My problem, though, was phosphates. My phosphates climbed so high. You're supposed to take these phosphate binders with every meal. A handful of calcium and a handful of phosphate binders every meal. Tedious and just the worst. When your phosphates climb that high, you get insanely itchy. It feels like something is trying to secrete through your skin, and you just can't scratch it off. I would scratch to the point of bleeding. Once, I was so itchy I was going insane. I decided to draw myself a bath. Hopefully I could wash this stuff off. Have any of you ever felt itchy underwater? It's crazy. So, Even through all this torture, I couldn't find it in myself to take these phosphate binders. I don't know why, but my phosphates were sky high my entire 10 years of dialysis. A few years later, I decided to, my apologies. I eventually developed hyperparathyroidism. They had to cut out my parathyroid gland. Typically, they replace one piece of it and put it back, but it didn't take. I no longer have a parathyroid hormone. So another body part lost due to my irresponsibilities. A few years later, I decided to try peritoneal dialysis. I'd like to take a moment to thank the PD department. They are by far the warmest, nicest people I've ever been treated by. Thank you very much. But when they put in a peritoneal tube, it's traumatic. The doctor takes this huge shish kebab and climbs up onto the table. He puts it underneath your belly button and uses his body weight to shove that thing through you. I remember the feeling of that shish kebab hitting the bottom of my back when it went through. It's a horrible feeling. With PD, they put all this sugary saline inside of your peritoneal cavity. It grows from 2.5 liters to 4.5 liters within just a few hours, depending on how much fluid you have on board. This much fluid inside your peritoneal cavity, you're always short of breath, no matter what. I would have to exhale and hold my breath just to tie my shoes. Luckily though, PD is a very good form of dialysis. I wouldn't have to worry about phosphate binders, fluid intake, all of that. All I'd have to worry about is being clean. I wasn't able to do that either. Unfortunately though, my life had more hurdles in store for me. I was getting recurring peritoneal infections, tremendously painful. It feels like something's burning your insides. But through some sort of freak luck with all these infections, a CT scan on my abdomen revealed a tumor on my native kidney. I had cancer. 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with it. Unfortunately, soon after, my father was diagnosed with cancer as well. I survived that year. After all this stuff passed, I went back to hemodialysis. My peritoneal cavity needed some healing from all the damage I had done to it. Once back on hemo, I was offered the opportunity to do home hemodialysis. I jumped at the chance to get out of the hospital. Training took a few months. The hardest part was learning how to stick these huge needles the size of a prong on a fork inside of your fistula. I would struggle for 15 minutes to stab myself at times. Eventually, I got the hang of it. The scariest moment I've had on dialysis at home was when the power failed. These machines have a 30-minute backup battery built in, which they anticipate this, but the sump pump does not. Imagine 2 to 3 bathtubs of water gushing out of the wall while you're on dialysis, alone. Well, my apologies, my girlfriend was there. Traumatic, but if I can take myself off dialysis mid-flood and clean it up with needles hanging from my fistula, I think I'm doing all right. After 9 years of dialysis, I found out about the paired exchange program. My mother volunteered, and within 8 months, I found a new kidney. The days leading up to my freedom were nerve-wracking. I'd seen so many others get kidneys before me, but now it's my turn. I hope so much for it to work out. I met with my surgeon, Dr. Guan. I expressed a lot of worry and anxiety. I asked about his statistics on his kidney transplant successes, but he won my confidence with his simple Schwarzenegger quote. I'm an easy sell if you know me. Soon enough, I was finally transplanted. I remember after they took out my catheter, I had to pee for the first time in 10 years. I was so excited, my first steps towards the toilet were so surreal. I had no idea what I was doing. I completely missed the toilet. Nowadays, though, I'm doing really good. I graduated from BCIT for land surveying, and I worked for a reputable firm, an engineering firm, on very big and small engineering projects. I take a lot better care of myself, and I've learned to be pretty decent with my medications. I'm very thankful for a third chance at life, and I intend on making the most of it. Thank you very much.